everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. And as promised, this is my follow-up video to a video I did a couple days ago entitled The Avengers Endgame and the Emperor's New Clothes. And I'll place a link to that in the top right-hand corner. And in that video, I was basically stating that so many people seem to be treating Avengers Endgame as though it were the Emperor's New Clothes, with all of the articles, just so many articles coming out trying to explain the things that are in this movie. And again, if you have to explain it, then that means it was a failure in storytelling. That stories should be concise and condensed and cohesive in one film or whatever. That you shouldn't need all of these other articles and treatises by the directors and writers and everything like that trying to explain all the little points that don't make sense. So people are either refusing to see the problems in the film, or they're admitting that there are problems in the film, but they're just not that bad. Just overlook it. No big deal. And I said that in particular, I wanted to talk in this video about the Hulk and Black Widow's arcs. In that video, I talked a lot about what was wrong with Captain America's ending and Thor, of course. The thing is, it's no mistake, it's no secret that they are trying to get the white men out of the way. Now, to somebody who doesn't know a lot about what's going on in comics or whatever, that might sound a little bit of like a aluminum hat, tinfoil hat kind of theory or whatever. But this is what they did in the comics. The films right now are drawing their inspiration now in this next phase from the all new, all different Marvel. And in that phase of comics, they wanted to bring in diversity. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all with bringing in more characters from diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, whatever. Nothing wrong with that at all. The problem was how they went about it. They went after all of the characters that people had loved for so long. They went after these straight white guys that they could not handle and did not abide in the comics anymore. And they didn't just add diverse characters to them. They crapped on these characters big time. Thor is now no longer worthy. That was the case in the comics for the longest time. He was deemed no longer worthy to hold Mjolnir, to even be called Thor. So Jane Foster, the woman, had to step up and do that. Captain America had, there was some sort of battle or whatever, and the super soldier serum was sapped from his system, so he became an old guy. So get him old and decrepit, put him out of the way so that we can have the shield passed to Sam Wilson, and we can have an African-American Captain America, because it's about time. And then, what else did they do? They did so many things to other characters as well. They had to kill off Iron Man and just put his consciousness in the suit that now can go to a young African-American girl. On and on and on. You can look at all of the examples one after another where they did this in their, their push for quote unquote diversity. And that's the problem. They completely disrespect all the characters that people loved. Primarily because they were the enemy. The face of the enemy is the straight white guy. That he has to go because that's anti-diverse, nonsense. So they did the same basic thing in the film universe. Now, not to quite the extent or quite as blatant, but every strong straight white man or whatever has to be out of the way now. He has to be out of the way. Thor has to be fat and has to be a joke now. And people say, hey man, that's survivor's guilt. It's a very real thing. Yeah, it's a very real thing. You're also telling a story right now about a thunder god from Asgard. That's not a very real thing. Stop trying to push reality and real human psychosis on a mythical character. Yes, these mythical heroes are going to reflect things that we go through in real life, but they should do so metaphorically. They should do so in a fictional manner. You can't just give the god of thunder survivor's guilt and turn him into the Big Lebowski. That did not work. That doesn't work for his storyline, especially after everything he'd just gone through and came out on top with Ragnarok. That was a huge leap forward for him. He wouldn't just turn around and crumble like a baby. It didn't work. No, it was, and their agenda was obvious. We killed off Iron Man, got to get him out of there. Now, that wasn't really such a problem because it really kind of worked for his arc and everything, and that was fine. We have to age up Captain America. Let's make him old and let's make him pass that shield to Sam, not Bucky, because, gotta have it to an African American now. Diversity. The rest of the characters, Hawkeye is going to be a good little family man now and pass the buck off to his daughter. That's going to happen. Pass the mantle to her. Ant-Man now is nice and submissive to Wasp and to his daughter, who will now come into the power and mantle as well. You know that's going to happen. So you just see it. You see it happening on every stage here. And in Spider-Man Far From Home, it appears that they're going to be introducing the multiverse. So it's just a matter of time before Spider-Gwen and Silk and whatever pop up and take over that role pretty much basically the same way. So even if you think that's just conspiracy theory, well then we can look at a solid example here, and that's when we get to the Hulk in this film. And I'll talk about Black Widow a little bit in a moment. But the Hulk in this film, I've read articles that are out there now that are trying to say, oh, what they did to the Hulk is so wonderful. This is what manhood and masculinity, this is what it should be. This is the good example of the non-toxic masculinity. Isn't it so great that Banner finally conquered his rage and he became just a gentle man, and he uses his brains, not his brute strength. And when he does use his strength, it's to protect, it's to hold up the crumbling building, to save his friends, not to bash in people's faces and all this kind of stuff. Now, when you back up from it and just give that story rather vaguely like that, there's actually truth to that. Yeah, I mean, you don't want people walking around with just completely aggressive, wanting to beat everybody's face in or whatever. It's great, strength should be used to protect, but what is to protect? Sometimes that has to mean going on the offense and whatnot. And it's truly great to be able to use brain over brawn and to let that be your go-to move and hold the brawn in reserve for when it's needed and whatnot. That's all fine. The problem here, though, is they're doing. I've said this before, SJWism is a religion. It is absolutely a religion. It operates like a religion. The people who adhere to it are operating just as religiously as your right-wing Christians or your Muslims or whatever. And they hate to hear that because that's their enemies, right? But no, this is the same way. If you look at Christian theorists or Christian, I'm saying you're using Christian for the example because I grew up evangelical and I'm now a Catholic, and I see this all the time. Every time a popular film comes out or whatever, you'll have some Christian teachers from whatever denomination or whatever try to take the film and try to turn it around and make it a Christian story and try and put a Christian parable out of it or something like that. Sometimes that works if you're using something like Tolkien, of course, obviously, and sometimes if they don't go too far with it, it can work. But more often than not, they are engaging in something called eisegesis. And it's ironic because these two terms I'm giving you now actually come from Bible study and are the warning of how to not read into the text, but rather pull out what is actually in the text and what it's telling you. So eisegesis is when you put into the text. You're putting your agenda, your meaning into the text. You're using that movie to tell your little story, to further your agenda. You don't want to do that when it comes to really getting the true meaning out of a text. You want to instead instead of eisegesis, you want to engage in exegesis, which is to draw out from the text the meaning that's actually there, to interpret it correctly without bringing anything to it. That's what you need to do in art. That's what films should do. Now, my problem with Endgame is that Endgame didn't properly exegete the story arcs of these characters before this movie. For whatever reason, the switch has been flipped, and people are the filmmakers, the producers, everybody behind the game now are they've turned a page and they're no longer worried about telling good, solid stories and honoring everything that's come before. And now they're worried about pushing the agenda. We see that on every level and every front. And this is what they did with the Hulk. We were promised a real profound story arc with what happened in the Hulk between Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame. That's what they told us. They said it was going to be a real profound story arc. And we saw that built up. We saw that built up with Ragnarok, with the idea that the Hulk took over and was actually able to hold the center, hold control of their body at this point and just be the Hulk all the time. That was a big deal. And then the Hulk side of his personality began to grow and mature a little bit. I mean, no more than a toddler, but at least he could speak and so forth. And then when Banner comes back into control, it's like he'd been locked in the trunk, he said. So this is a progression. This is interesting because previously to that point, that's not how the Hulk had worked. It had been Banner, and in moments of anger, it's the Hulk, and then it fades out again. So that was a step in a progression. Interesting to see where that went. In Infinity Game, of course, then you had the Hulk not wanting to come in control at all. And, they never answered that. They never spoke to that at all. And the logical conclusion was that he didn't want to, he got his butt kicked. He didn't want to go back out there again. But they were saying, oh, we got this and that planned. Well, what they had planned was really just to kind of ignore the Hulk, just to kind of pretend that all of that stuff they did with him as a character doesn't mean anything anymore. And now we're just going to do Professor Hulk. We just want to do this Professor Hulk now because this Professor Hulk is a good, soft, tame, safe, neutered version of untoxic masculinity. And that's what we want the Hulk to be now. Now, there's nothing wrong with the idea of Professor Hulk. That's been done in the comics, and it was actually a wonderful, profound, area in the Hulk's history and his progression, and they really delved into it and did it correctly. And they talked about the different personalities that was in him and the abuse that he'd suffered earlier in his life, and how these different personalities would come to the forefront to protect and stuff like that. It's a fascinating concept. Endgame didn't even bother remotely going into any of that. In fact, we get everything we know about Professor Hulk in one little scene of exposition. We don't even get to see it. We just hear Banner telling a story of what he did, and then boom. You're supposed to accept it, roll with it, deal with it now. That's done. This is Hulk now. And the Hulk we have isn't Banner. It's not Banner as the Hulk. It's this tame, wishy-washy, just completely neutered version of Banner even. I mean, you look at Banner in the Avengers film, even all the way back to the Hulk film if you want to, but if you're just looking at the Ruffalo version, look at him in the Avengers film. Even as Banner, he was a conflicted, deep, profound man. He wasn't a violent person. He didn't want to be violent as Banner by any means. No, he would much rather use his abilities. In fact, that's what he did. He was in Calcutta. He was trying to do the best good he could. He knew he couldn't destroy the Hulk, so he wanted to at least serve and use his know-how. But he was also no fool. He was also no little pansy, wishy-washy. Oh, hey everybody, it's we'll get a picture with you. And no, he had a lot of integrity. And he also was always angry. Remember? That just made him so fascinating of a character. Now, it's okay if you want to progress him away from that or do something different, but you've got to show it. You can't just have him tell it. You can't just sit down at a diner and have him tell that. That is just completely dropping the ball on his character. And it doesn't work for his character to turn around and say, no, but it's a wonderful picture now of like a real good, safe masculinity and so forth. That's eisegeting. That's trying to bring your agenda and your meaning to this character who has never been set up for that. And the films led up to this point, even with the conflict that he had with Infinity War, that's not a natural character progression that leads into this version of the Professor Hulk that they did. They would have had to really develop that. And I know that they say there's all kinds of justifications. People are already trying to type in the comments. I know. Well, there were a lot of other characters in the movie. That's not an excuse. That as a storyteller, you either figure out a way to do it or you don't do it at all. You back off because you can't do it well. Then the people will say, well, the rights and blah, blah, blah. Once again, not an excuse. Not an excuse for poor storytelling. If you're going to have the character in there, then you need to do him well or don't do him at all. That's the way to approach something as a storyteller. And the real reason another reason anyway, that they pick on Hulk here is because he is tied to Black Widow's story arc. And I've already mentioned in previous videos how Black Widow's sacrifice in Endgame makes no sense. It doesn't. Now, not in the context of the scene, as we said before. Yes, of course, she would want to lay down her life for Hawkeye. They've got this deep friendship. She owes him, right? She's got red in her ledger and wants to wipe it out, so to speak. That's something that we've set up all the way back from the Avengers film. But that's the point. As I've said in other videos, she gets no character progression. She makes a sacrifice as her end to her character that she would have made all the way back in the 2012 Avengers movie. There's no difference there. Now, the character has learned and progressed quite a bit, but they don't take any of that into account in Endgame, and they just kind of shove her off to the side and go ahead and just kill her off, give her sacrifice, whatever, or get her out of the way. She had wonderful character progression. She learned how to just be a friend and not a manipulator with her femininity. That was a wonderful progression with her and Steve Rogers and the friendship, the kind of sibling-like friendship that they came to have. And she was trying to sort of play him a little bit. It's the only way she knew how in Winter Soldier. And she's like, well, what do you want me to be? And he says, how about a friend? And he truly does mean that. He's not trying to get anything else from her. And she realizes that she can actually trust him in that. The only other person she's done that with was Hawkeye, was Clint. So that she's had some wonderful character progression. And then whatever you may think of the Hulk Natasha or the Banner Natasha romance, I know people don't like that because it didn't come from the comics. That's fine. That's another discussion though. If you have a problem with it because it didn't take place in the comics, that's a different discussion. Right now, I'm arguing though, that they did it well. If they were going to do it, they did it well in terms of this universe, because it was already set up in that first scene where Natasha has to go bring in Banner in Avengers. I mean, this is a man who's unlike any other she's met. She can't just work her wiles on him. He's not really receptive to that. And he literally does terrify her. He's like, unlike any other foe, on the field or in combat, male or female. This is a completely new challenge to her. It's a wonderful Beauty and the Beast story. And if you know anything about the females, the feminine hero's journey, it's about taming the beast. And it was just beautiful. It was beautifully done. But they dropped it. They brushed it aside even. They didn't even want to worry about it anymore. Infinity War, you had that one little awkward moment where, they see each other again, and then they just drop it. They drop it. We don't know. Did they have a talk? I mean, come on. You developed this. You got to give us something now. You can't just ignore it. That's bad storytelling. It doesn't mean that they have to be together in the end, but they just ignored it because they did. Now, why did they ignore it? Because Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, the way the character's been progressed, the way she has existed in the MCU is a blight upon the feminist agenda nowadays, upon the third wave, intersectional, no difference between men and women. Black Widow is unapologetically feminine, and she uses her femininity, and she owns it. She's sexy. She doesn't pretend to be anything else. She is the polar opposite of a Captain Marvel-like character. They wanted her out of there. She had to go, and they don't want any more characters like her. So never look for that again. You're never going to see a character who completely owns her femininity anymore. So you're going to see this bullshit gender deconstruction now throughout every film that they do. That's just what they're going for now. They wanted to kill her off because she no longer suited their agenda. That's bad storytelling. That's what I mean when I say that the MCU now is consciously prioritizing agenda and their social platform over good storytelling. If you are a preacher, if you're a social reformer, if you're a politician or something like that, then sure, that's your priority, your agenda, your social platform. If you're an artist, if you're a storyteller, then all of that crap gets subjugated to the art of storytelling. That's your craft. You can't just do it poorly because, well, I want to put my values up ahead. This is the problem. This is why people smirk so much at these Christian films that come out from these purely Christian companies, and they come out about, and they're always about somebody coming to Jesus, conveniently or whatever. And I'm not saying every single one of them is like this, but I'm saying this is they get this reputation, and it's because a lot of them are like this. They're contrivances. They're a story contrived to meet this agenda. There is no difference between that. There's no difference between one of these really cheesy, contrived Christian plot lines and what the SJWs are doing in movies today. It's the exact same thing. They are subjugating the story to their agenda, and they're letting wonderful characters that people have come to know and love and be invested in their character arcs, like Black Widow, like the Incredible Hulk, and they're just tossing them by the wayside. If they can't force them into this new mold that they want, then they'll just kill them off. That's all they'll do. I have no idea what they'll end up doing with the Hulk now, but even if they were to turn to him now and give him the proper scope and the proper focus and really try to develop him more, it can never undo what they've already rushed and skipped over so much by going from Infinity War just quickly to Professor Hulk and just have him, talk about that at a little diner, and that's the exposition. Okay, we're done. Move on. That doesn't work. This is poor storytelling. So I've gone on quite a bit. I'll stop there, but don't think for a second that I'm done talking about this movie or the MCU or Brie Larson or any other of the things that people bitch about in the comments from time to time and say, why are you so obsessed? Because you keep coming to my channel and commenting and giving me money for it. So there. So it's culturally relevant. It's highly culturally relevant. There are tons of articles coming out every day about it. And as long as it's a thing, as long as it's in the news, as long as it's culturally relevant, then it's in my field here. It's in my wheelhouse. It's in the modern day cultural mythology, especially of superheroes. So I will address what is there and what is in my sights. I'll be back, of course, with more reviews. I have caught up on my Elvira comics. I will be reviewing those, and back with more Star Wars stuff or live streams and whatnot. Do remember my own graphic novel, Tales from the Stacks, link in the description. And until the next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching. Do you like comics that are unafraid to portray women as feminine and men as masculine? Do you enjoy being entertained rather than preached to? If so, then you'll love my own graphic novel currently on Indiegogo. Tales from the Stacks is an anthology series in the vein of The Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt. It contains 3 uncanny tales to thrill and haunt you long after reading. With interior art by Dave T. and variant covers by John Malin, Kyle Ritter, and Kyung Lee, you have lots of options to choose from. You can find the link in the description below or search Indiegogo for Tales from the Stacks, and tell the comic industry you don't have to settle for their social agenda platforming. Thanks. And last but not least, don't forget that your Professor Geek now has a merch store. Check out the current options from t-shirts to magnets to the iconic Professor Geek coffee mug, and let me know if you'd like to see something else. The link is in the description, or you can go to cafepress.com/ProfessorGeek.